We're here to talk today at SUMSF 2023 about the evolution of the damage prevention process. And so with that, I guess that's the theme. So I guess we'll start with, Lawrence, you've been involved in this for some time, and so has Peter Lamb, but I think Barb is probably the most experienced one from the damage prevention side. So Barb, if you would, maybe you could kick it off and just sort of give us your thoughts on your vision of where this will go, especially in terms of your experience recently with the CGA and what their vision is. Maybe you can see how, or tell us how your vision supports theirs and how it might be different or enhanced or whatever.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. I joined Gopher State One Call in 2015, and I had no prior experience with damage prevention. So first I had to learn a lot about the basics. And then a while back, it was clear that damages hadn't been reduced. I looked at the Minnesota damages, and they hadn't been reduced in 5 years, 6 years. And so I looked at it, our board looked at it and said, what can we do different? And so in 2020, we started two projects, the GPS-enabled locating devices, and then the topic that you heard today twice was the underground mapping project. And so our vision is to say, what action can we take to improve the industry? And we take action not knowing where it will go, what will work, what won't work. But the key message was, let's get stakeholders together and try something. And both of these efforts that we started in 2020 have moved well along. We did one in 2019 that didn't work so well at all. So we've had our failures as well as making some progress on some activities. So it's just keep it moving, and we have to get the locations of those underground lines. We have to have that accuracy. In this day and age, that's just should be a fundamental requirement. So that's what I see.
Perfect. Lawrence, how about yourself?
I guess this has been a topic that's come up for years now, like you said, and it's been hotly debated. And it'll be interesting to see when we can finally come up with a solution on it. But I think that the key thing is, when we've been talking about this, is trying to figure out kind of the route with what people want to do with this data. So I think there's two kind of primary fields that might be using. One is kind of from the locate side and the damage prevention side, which is maybe a little along what Barb's speaking with. And then there's the subsurface utility engineering side that has similar requirements, obviously, and can use a lot of the same data, but has kind of different intentions with the data and different requirements for the data. So thinks about it a little bit differently and more qualifications in that base. So I think it's a great topic to bring up and to have today on as part of this kind of panel discussion. It'll be interesting to just talk back and forth with yourself and Barb and Peter about kind of some of those different requirements and how we can achieve them and come up with something that I think we can be proud of going forward. I've said this to a lot of people when I talk to especially new grads coming out of school, and everyone has a hard time believing that we don't have this in place already. It's like, sorry to say, but that's the reality. So it's up to us as an industry to put this in place so we can kind of put that behind us.
Right on. Excellent. And Peter, you represent kind of the owner's interests in this, both the damage prevention and also efficiencies of construction and safety and all that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts on where we've gone or what we've gotten to so far, and how we've improved or at least how you envision we're going to improve the current process, and then where you think we might be able to take this in terms of efficiencies and benefits for DOTs especially?
Well, my background from land surveying made me think that it was strange that land surveyors were doing such a great job of keeping track of the invisible lines that mark all our boundaries, but we weren't keeping track of the visible lines under the ground that could explode on us if we were to hit them. And as a surveyor in the field, I was very conscious when we were driving 4-foot-long iron bars with points on the bottom. We were always very wary of the things underground that could be hit by mistake. And, if things were hit by mistake, it was often because they might be, the utilities might have gone in without contractors being, say, fully aware of where boundaries were. So they could be, if they were crossing boundary lines, say from a street onto private property, that's when they would most pose a problem to land surveyors, putting in bars at property corners. So that was sort of my background. And when I joined the Ministry of Transportation in 1999, one of my tasks I was given was to start looking at post-construction reports. And these are reports that are done up after a highway project is completed. And it would highlight the things that went well and the things that didn't go so well. And I noticed the pattern that many of these project construction reports found that utilities were often things that were uncovered at construction and then would delay construction. So and I also early on I came across a U.S. Federal Highways report that indicated or that concluded that the mapping of underground utilities was one of the best ways you could reduce damage to the utilities. That was their conclusion. It was quite a long study and an in-depth study, and it jived with what I felt was true. It was that the better we kept track of underground utilities, the better we could avoid hitting them during construction and designing around them as well in a more proactive manner. So from my perspective, it's all about combining good survey data, good reliable survey data, whose accuracy is well known, and then putting that information on digital maps that could be shared with others.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the challenges, Peter, is that when you look at the fundamental problem like that, it's very the solution is very logical, right? Like exactly what you said. I think the real challenge becomes when you get multiple stakeholders and how we get everyone on the same page, right? Is what's the CAD standard? I remember writing the CSA S250 guideline, and I think we spent about 3 months debating what color water mains would be on a record drawing, which was just like, I thought it would be blue in about 30 seconds and we'd move on to the next discussion, right? And I think therein lies the challenge, is trying to get everyone on the same page, especially when it's going to cost some people money to make changes to their the way they do things and change their process, because change is tough with everything. But that's that open-mindedness that we need to take a step forward, I think.
Yes, and I think Minnesota has showed us in the previous presentation that by keeping things simple, you kind of reduce the number of areas that people can disagree about. So for example, Bob was mentioning just 5 attributes for the utility lines on the Minnesota mapping project. Keeping stripping things down to their most essential components is a way of kind of reducing individual nuances of the many databases that people already maintain for their utilities.
One of the things I have to read the CJA report, the best practices report, and one of the things I identified in there was the more efficient locates and more accurate locates, more timely locates. So just that, a lot of utility owners have their own locate crews. I know Enbridge, for instance, had a lot of their own locate technicians. So that's one case where the utility themselves would save a bunch of money just by producing a map for their locate technicians. So when they go to locate something, they know where it's supposed to be. They can go out and confirm it, mark it, and then make that information available. And if they do find a discrepancy, and they are out there, then they can update their GIS system, and it's a trusted record. It's their own locate technicians that they know and trust.
Yeah, I've often said to people, it's kind of like putting together a puzzle out there. And if you've got an accurate you got the front of the box that accurately shows you what you're looking for. It's a heck of a lot easier putting the puzzle together than if you have the wrong box lid or whatever, right? The better the records we can get, all those benefits flow downhill from there.
That's a great analogy.
One of the things that we're lucky at MTO to have is a good geodetic framework for referencing everything. So we do extensive high accuracy control surveys, and we relate all our topographic survey information to that and all our legal boundary information. So it's you know, it's been surveyed on the order of 1 or 2 centimeters generally across the whole of Ontario. So it's a very, very strong, accurate survey framework with which to link our many different kinds of data, you know, aerial survey data as well, topographic, and of course, everything is based, all the design work is based on that same framework. So we've had that in place for many years. And, you know, I guess the challenge for utility companies is they don't have that luxury. If they, you know, if they can tap into existing control points that are already established in the ground, that's great. But often they may not have complete skill set maybe to do that kind of work.
But isn't that why you hire people like Lawrence and you know, surveyors to go out there on the project and kind of survey everything in?
Yeah,
Yes. If they're using the common control points and they are aware of various shifts that have occurred in the reference frameworks over the years, then yes, then that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example where the complexity lies, because if people are not using that common land base, and we're talking about how do we get everyone sharing information together, they're floating in space from each other, right? They're not spatially correct. And now you've got water mains that are supposed to be running down roads or running in people's backyards, or worst case in the wrong city from where they're supposed to be. So that's, I think, I don't know if I want to say challenge number one, but it's certainly one of the big challenges that's required for us to get over, and talking particularly here in Ontario, but I know Ontario is not unique in various jurisdictions. We got to agree on that first.
Now, I know that CDOT, for example, in their right of way, they kind of mandated an accuracy level for all the data that's collected there. Is there any thought about, is there a desire? I guess there is a desire to do that at MTO, but is that something that's coming down the road, or something you guys are looking at now? Or
yes, I believe our permit conditions guidance has a reference to the CSA standard and the accuracy levels in that document.
excellent. Okay.
Is it being used, you find, Peter? Like, I know that the document's been out for, it's crazy to believe, but like almost coming on a decade now.
That's a good question, and it's unfortunately our office is a little bit disconnected from the construction side of things, but then again, we are I think we're collaborating a lot more with the tools that we have, like Teams and so on, and I think we're starting to collaborate more on a large BIM effort at MTO. So I think that will help propel us to do, you know, to look at our as-builts more closely and insist on something that's readily incorporated to a digital system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Barb, what about Minnesota? I think you're on mute.
I was on mute because I had a dog barking. Yeah, so I had to mute. But I think in the last year and a half, I've seen some momentum about accuracy of locating, accuracy of the lines. I've seen that both within Minnesota, certain companies, some companies have 100% of their lines highly accurate. Others are moving in that direction, getting legacy lines in. Municipalities especially are taking some proactive steps in getting better accuracy for their underground utilities. So I see we're not at a tipping point yet, but I've certainly seen a big uptake in interest and activities.
What are they
especially
using,
municipalities?
Sorry, Barb. What are they using to qualify that accuracy?
Well, it depends. So I'm most familiar with it. the GPS-enabled locating devices. But you can also do many other technologies as well. But those new devices are so inexpensive, $10,000. They're highly accurate. They're easy to use. And so there's a good good return and for the investment, as well as the security that your maps are higher quality.
It'd be interesting to talk to some of those utilities to see if they are collecting into ASC 3822, for instance, or if they intend to go down that road eventually. Because once we get certified data, I mean that's bliss, right? That's the end goal here, is to understand exactly where everything is. And as Jeff Slice used to say, we need to know what's below. And if we do that to a certain degree of accuracy, like a couple of centimeters, there's all kinds of things you can do with that data, including, excavation guidance systems that would prevent, a bucket tooth from hitting a pipe or a fiber line or something, because they, exactly where it is.
Yeah, and at a meeting yesterday, there was some discussion at a group we had with even putting as-builts. Not everything is still getting highly accurate data as things are being installed. So how do we get that momentum to be changed? That was a little bit of a big surprise to me. I just thought that would be a standard, best practice right now. But again, that was a big concern that was brought up yesterday at a session I was at.
Did they talk at all about the ASC 75 standard that was, I'll say, finally published last year?
At this session, they didn't reference that, but if you had talked to them offline, these engineers are well aware of that, right?
Okay. Yeah, because that's I guess first thing is getting those standards, whether it be CSA S250 or the ASC 75, which are I'll call them brother sister documents, speak very close to each other. But getting them is one thing, and then having people actually use them, and hence having owners require anyone putting infrastructure within their right of ways or what have you use them is the next big step, right? It's like anything else that we can talk about. We've got to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Well, it's funny that same conversation Peter just mentioned it, where it's part of the permit process to get those as-built on a timely basis and accurate as-builting, and I think that needs to happen. So that's part of the motivation, I think, for people to gather that data accurately, is because it's a permit requirement.
Yeah, that's something that could be done at a local level in the US, a county level, a state level. You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And the technology is there to take advantage of it. And it's in their best interest to get it to the client's hands as quickly as possible, get that off their plate. And they're not scrambling, trying to find drawings months later so they can find out where the hell did this red line go, so I can provide the as-built back to the owner. And that has happened many, many times, as we know.
Yeah, I think working toward this, the digital twin concept will maybe help us focus on maintaining the model. So like if you're focused on maintaining a model that most accurately reflects reality, then I think you're going to be thinking more about quality as-builts. And too often I think my own ministry has been very focused on design and construction, and then it's on to the next design and construction project, right? So the maintenance of utilities has traditionally been a bit of an afterthought, and but when you realize that there are high risk implications to not managing them well, then you start thinking, yeah, there's a little bit of money invested in as-builting during construction or shortly after construction can go a long way to prevent a pound of problems.
Well, better information always provides great dividends. Lack of information, that's where your risk is.
Yeah. And I think when you look at things at a project level, obviously we're talking about some mapping kind of at a larger level, but looking at a project level, there's some simple things that owners can do to help make sure that whoever they're hiring to do some of the work, and I'm talking specifically on the engineering side, puts that kind of focus on utilities and makes them understand that this is something critical. And kind of without naming names, I know there's a lot of clients that we work with that talk about how important utilities are, but then when you look at the list of people that have to be named in a proposal, for example, you have to name the highway engineer or the bridge engineer or the environmental person. Never do you have to list who the utility engineer is or utility coordinator. And in my mind, if it's that important to you, why not list that position? Why not list the position as something that has to be evaluated on? Why not list the standards that need to be followed as part of those submissions, right? It's kind of like if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it from some of those things. So I think that would be a very simple step forward that a lot of people could take to raise that bar in terms of the quality of people that we're getting working on some of these projects that will help ensure that things are as built or done properly and the ASC and all those things are followed when we're doing things.
Yeah, the construction documentation, construction documents and specifications could drive a lot of this. Make it a requirement as part of project deliverables.
Yeah, and then all this information could then feed into that database that we're talking about, right? And have qualifications behind it. I think one of the things that'd be interesting, Barb, is to get your feedback from when putting together the mapping in Minnesota. Who was intended to be the end user on that? Was it the locators, the project owners? Was it the engineers? What was it who was it built for primarily?
Well, it's really built for the folks doing the whole process. So in the design phase, the engineers, Minnesota and most states have a project ticket or a design ticket where they request from the facility operators their maps or locating. And there's some compliance, but those are hard to get. This could streamline that. The second, the locators, obviously, they could see when they show up to a site that there's 6 things under here. What if I get interference? I'm supposed to be just this, and they mark entire lot, but I know it's right here in the front. And then obviously the excavators, especially with new technology on the excavators. But they also know that, I'm pretty close to this gas line. I know I see the mark, but now I really can see the broader picture of this site. So it's really all those 3 stakeholders.
In terms of the data that when the engineers are using, I'm just wondering how it compares. Is the data essentially becomes at that point, in talking engineering language, a record drawing that they can draw upon and then determine if there's a requirement to do additional investigations based on kind of the accuracy and the I guess completeness of the information that's found there?
Well, it would be what they have today. So again, depending on the facility operator, they have different quality levels, correct? But it would get them started to say, here's what we have, and then they could have their discussions. So we don't control any of the facility operators' data, but it could streamline that first step of getting something. And then they could say, okay, it's at this quality level. Now I have to figure out what I need to do to get it at a better quality level. Do I have to request actual locates? Do I have to partner with them so they go out and get better information for this possible relocation of utilities? But that first step is quite difficult many a time.
And the quality level like that, and again, we've had these discussions, Steve, as part of a lot of our meetings and all that, is who's qualifying that information? Because if we're following the ASC 38 standard, then there should be a professional engineer, and someone would debate a surveyor, but I won't debate it up here, should be signing off on that data that goes into the database, right? And is that the case, or is there anyone signing off on data, or does it even reference quality levels A, B, C, and D in that database?
Well,
go ahead, Steve.
I can tell you what NUR is doing. Everything comes in at quality level D, so it's more or less unknown.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're doing as-builting, of course, that as-builting has to go back to the utility owner, quality level A. But anything else, they might have some quality level B information, but again, somebody has to sign off on that. So like you say, it has to be, a competent individual on whether that's a professional engineer or professional surveyor. I guess the question is, what's driving this? What does the standard say about that?
Yeah, I think that brings out an interesting, and again, this discussion,
Yeah.
I remember having it when writing both at the in the committee sitting for ASC 75 and 3802 or 33 S20 S250 was,
Yeah.
and then if we do a good job with these as-builts, then not all quality level D should be treated equally, right? In theory, there's some really good quality level D stuff that's bang on, and then there's some other quality level D stuff that may not even be in the right county or whatever, right? So it bodes that ability to then use those standards and put those accuracy levels into that metadata,
Mhm.
right? In addition to the quality levels.
Yeah, I'm almost of the mind that there should be a certified, to meet ASCE or CSA, it has to be signed off, period. Now you can still identify a quality level, but it's more notional.
An accuracy level. For the as-built, they're the accuracy levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw the GPS reading come in and it says that according to, the 12 satellites I had in view and it's accurate to, 10 cents, then I should, I can make a decision on that, but it's still, even though it's 10 cents, it might not meet a quality level because nobody signed off on it. But at least I know basically what the accuracy was that was captured for that particular GPS point using that device at that time, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So at least we've got something as a starting point. Otherwise, you don't know if it's 5 centimeters or 5 meters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And hence all these little nuances that we get involved with when we try to pull all this stuff together, right? And I think that at some point we've got to get beyond these nuances and say what's the lowest level that we'll accept, and at least start building data and know that it may not be perfect on day one, but we can make improvements to it. Identify what it is, don't confuse it with what it's not, and just start building it out and make continuous improvements once we get going.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, and any data is better than no data.
Absolutely.
Right now, there's a lot of data that's out there is almost like no data. You don't have a clue where it is, but it's here somewhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't really help, right? But and there's a lot of over notifications too. And I think this is one thing, Barb, even your utility members, I'm sure some of them get a lot of over notifications because they have no confidence in where their stuff is. And once you start getting some of this data from the field, they can start feeling a little more comfortable about where their stuff actually is and start to, maybe reduce some of those buffer zones, but that's up to them, I guess, and yourselves.
No, you make a good point. Many utility companies have reduced their buffer zones as they get more comfortable with the accuracy. So rather than having a small town as their buffer zone, they can parse it much, much better. We've seen that over the last many years. Right.
Yeah. So what about the opportunity for automation of some of this stuff? I mean, we saw the city of Burnaby had automated their ticket notification response, for instance. So do you see much opportunity? You must see some opportunity there for utility owners to save staff time to respond to tickets, for instance.
Yeah, in looking at what they had in Burnaby from an operations standpoint, it's phenomenal. Essentially, target out the area that you're looking for, and it automatically sends you the records associated with that area, right? It'd be nice if that was the case in many areas like that. So, and who knows if you can use Chat GPT to write a contract in 2 seconds, who knows what's going to be able to do in the future as we get better used to using these tools.
It would be interesting to see what utility companies are doing elsewhere. I mean, the city of Burnaby is somewhat unique in terms of they're in British Columbia and they produce a map. They don't do a proper locate per se. That's up to the to the excavator or the design firm that's out there working in the field to do those locates. But if anywhere else, just providing that utility map to their own locate crews or their own SUE companies, like for design tickets, they're supposed to go out, I believe, and send a locate crew out to do design tickets. Are they not, Barb?
In Minnesota, each state is different. They have an option, provide maps and or locate. So it's an option in Minnesota.
Okay. Okay. So if they could automate that process, because I'm sure a lot of that's not automated currently.
Right, and that's one of the first ideas that we have in terms of saving time. View the utility operators maps from it so that the design engineer can see that and then see what the accuracy is and see what next steps they have to do. Right.
Yeah, and based on that, they're going to get feedback from the field too, right? So I mean, again, it's another map improvement for them, for their system of record.
Steve, how do we get over the big hurdle of identifying the champion to take this thing on? And I'm talking whether that be a government body, whether it be a private company with big pocketbooks, or whether it be whatever on Tier-1 or one of the one call things. How do we identify who that is in various jurisdictions and then allow them to get the ball rolling? Like, I know on the meeting that we attend with CUIR, we're talking specifically about all of Canada, but maybe it does become a provincial thing, or maybe it is a national thing. But we've got to take that first big step and get someone on board that's got some pockets to get it going.
Well, you know, there's several that come to mind. Infrastructure Canada, for instance, I know is looking at what we're doing. Infrastructure Ontario is looking at what we're doing. I know that CGA in the south is looking at what Barb's doing, and I think they will probably be a major proponent of this, and maybe they've got some ideas about who can provide the impetus to get it rolling down south. I'm still hoping that the CCGA up north here will take this in hand and promote it, or get involved in helping.
I think that they could be good at promoting it, but I don't think that they could be the leads behind it, right? It's got to be an agency like an IO or an IC that's got the clout behind them to actually take it and get it going.
Yeah, or a state or provincial government for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're approaching it a little bit different in the sense that, again, we got started, we built the pilot, we're building it to the more robust system, but starting on a voluntary basis. We didn't go into it saying it's mandatory, it's going to be regulated. That's not up to us at this point. So how do we start from the position of being voluntary? And we've got, a few companies now that saying, yep, we really need to start doing this, and this is a good way to go. So again, that's that momentum. It's talking about it, showing it, it's real. It's not a matter of if we'll be GPSing or having highly accurate underground utility maps. It's just when will that happen and how will it be done? And then how many years will it take us to get there? That's my opinion. For the vision of the future, this will happen.
From your experience, Barb, because you've done in Minnesota, obviously, and looking at what the group's trying to do here in Canada, either a Canada-wide or provincial thing, could you imagine doing what you're doing right across the US? Or do you think that would have been too big a mountain and would be easier to do just Minnesota?
Well, we started with Minnesota, and our system is envisioning to be able to hook into any one call system because it's an open source software platform. And then through ASIs, you could connect it to a state of Wisconsin, which uses a different one call software platform, or Idaho, which uses a different one call platform. So that's why we decided to go with open source rather than just building it within. We use one call concepts because they only cover X number of states. So we made it early on that we'd like it available to anybody who wishes, any state that wishes to use it, or Canada or province.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a big decision for us, which way to go. We took a couple months to wrestle with that.
Yeah, I agree. It's not something that should be mandated. I think the utility owners and all the stakeholders will see the benefits in doing it, and it'll happen eventually anyway. It's just going to evolve there. But the question is, how can we help push that evolution along?
Yeah. Did you have challenges with, kind of like Peter said, with different land bases being used by the various utility companies?
Are you talking to Barb or?
Yeah, sorry, Barb.
Well, we're addressing that right now.
I know we have the problem, Steve. That's not a question.
Yeah, that is a topic, and with the Shared Geo's experience that they've done with numerous geospatial projects, we're working through that. Because I know our call center uses a certain base map, and other folks can use different maps.
And just so you know, I've been reaching out to like Jim Terrell at Altalus, for instance, just a few weeks ago. So he may be joining us. He's at the Alberta land base. The BC folks are on, and TerraNet in Ontario is on board already. So it's just a matter of getting them aware of this and getting them involved to some degree. Say, yeah, we can provide the land base for you. And then it's a matter after that of coming up with what reference frame are we going to use and what datum, or sorry, what GOI, for instance. And it will be a common one within, I guess, 2 years now. There's ITRF for North America should be in use, right? So hopefully that those become non-issues, but for now, it's something we definitely have to deal with, as well as all the different data sharing agreements and that sort of thing that we need to evolve. And you know, Barb's team has provided data sharing agreements to me that that they're using to kind of read through and kind of understand how they should be structured. So there's another thing that we can that'll help move it, move it forward, if you will.
How do you get over the security side of it, Barb? And I know certain utilities, it's not as much of an issue, and sometimes it's an issue truly from a security standpoint. Other times it's an issue, particularly in the telecom world, from a competition standpoint.
Yeah, we've heard all those excuses, and just recently there was
This is a good word, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that respectfully,
Yeah.
but I think it's a matter of do you want to keep fixing everything, or having hospitals go down if you're a fiber optic company, or your 911 system go down, or do you want to be preventative and save some money? Sarah Magruder-Lyle from a CGA, she comes from the pipeline industry, and she speaks very boldly about the security issues of pipelines, saying, it's really, that really isn't the issue. I think the biggest one on communications is I'm going into this town and going to put in my fiber optics. Well, the minute you start, the confidentiality is over. So why not let people who are excavating see where it is? It's over and done at that point. We're not going to show proposed maps in this city next year. We're thinking about putting in these lines, but it's already installed and already marked with above ground markers and pedestals. So, I mean, you can go on and on about this topic. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Out of curiosity on that, don't they need to get a permit from the owner, whoever owns that piece of land to get put that fiber in? Don't they have to get a permit for it?
Well, the permitting discussion we had earlier is a really good step to build that into the process. So perhaps more and more city, counties, and states would develop that type of stepping stone, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that permit is a public record, though. I mean, is it really all that anonymous, or?
Well, the permit itself to get it in, that I don't have expertise to comment on it.
Okay. And I noticed when Bob did his presentation, he said the owner's information is not displayed to the locator, for instance, so it would not be available to the guys in the field necessarily. And we could minimize that email going back to the owner too. It could be, an anonymized email from the field. Yeah,
the capability is there to show as much as you want. You could show the owner, you could show the depth, you could show all the features. And that would all be up to the facility operator. We're just taking as you said, the simple approach. To get started, what is the bare minimum that's required to show that there's something there and it's in this area with this amount of accuracy, highly accurate or not so accurate, and then get the lay of the land. At some point, will the facility operator say, yep, put my name there, put the accuracy there, put all the curb stops there, or whatever the features they want. Another facility operator may say, no, I just want you to represent that there's a line there, underground line. So again, that's the flexibility that is built into our system, to this system.
I would
But if
think
you-
many owners
yeah.
would want their ownership indicated on a map because they often have rules about being contacted if something is encountered in the field during construction. So that would, simplify that process of contacting the owner if it was found, if they found something, or if a contractor excavator found something that was different in the excavation from what was shown on a map, then I think our CSA standard, Lawrence, talks about providing feedback to the owner about that so that they can rectify their records.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it may evolve to that. Again, it's, we didn't want to come in heavy handed and say, this is the way it's going to be, and you have to show all of this. Here's capability, here's how we can start with the lines, show representationally what's there, and then add on as needed. But all that capability to add on is already built into the system. So a facility operator can choose to start as complex or as simple as they wish.
Yeah, and I like the Minnesota model of, not sending these edicts down from on high, but creating a usable system first, showing it to people, and then encouraging them to adopt it. It seems to me you're more likely to get good positive buy-in from people who can see something in the works, and having it open source as well is a big benefit to those organizations that might balk at paying more for new software and trying to integrate it into their existing IT systems and so on.
Yeah,
Right,
and maybe, Peter, those requirements become a quote unquote phase 2 of the whole process, right? Much like here in Ontario, where the one call went around for a long time as a voluntary system until it got legislated, right? And then when it got legislated, it took that next step. Maybe this has
Right,
to
yeah.
evolve in much the same manner, where you start creating it, show its viability, make sure it works, make sure you work through the bugs, and then you try to make sure that everyone's included on it. And the reality is, like, there's as many utilities as there are in Canada and Ontario. I'm going to say there's the big ones, and if you could get the big ones on board, the Enbridges, the Bells, the Rogers, the major municipalities, you'd have a lot of your information relatively quickly, and then you can fill in the blank with a lot of the smaller ones.
And you've definitely got a low barrier to entry here. So I mean, it's it's not costly on their side to hook up to the system. Excellent.
Oh, there's Jonathan.
Hello.
That's a
He
good
popped
one.
up. He popped up on us.
Sound the gong.
Yeah, right.
So great panel discussion. Very interesting to hear experts talking through these issues and next steps. Thank you all very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks, guys, for working with me, especially as moderator, I should say. Anyway, it's good.
Yeah, Jeff would be thrilled.